My name is Patton. I've been a professional artist for about 20 years. I was a school teacher. A lot of people in my family love art, and I've always loved art since I was a child, but really didn't get into it until I was about 50. My sister in Boston had been doing artwork. My sister-in-law was doing artwork, my cousin, my niece. The whole family was really involved with art. But I never, as much as I loved art, I never thought I could create art or paint or do any of those things until one year, the year that both of my parents passed away. And my sister and I spent a lot of time taking care of our parents. And so I thought, well, I'll get some art materials into it with my sister. And the first things that I did were actually pretty awful. And so I decided, being a school teacher, that maybe I ought to get some education in art. So I took a lot of classes from some very excellent artists, a lot in Lafayette at the art museum up there. And first started out with acrylics and became so obsessed with it that I did it every single day, before school, after school, weekends, and developed some skills. But I have to say that the studio lessons that I took really helped quite a bit. So I started with acrylics, then I went to oils, and then started taking watercolor lessons. I decided that they all have their own unique traits. They're different. I switched between doing oils and doing watercolors. But when I started out, I think the thing that I enjoyed most was doing water pictures, the ocean, creeks, streams, lakes, because those were peaceful. They were peaceful. And sometimes I'll do paintings of walks in the woods, or florals, or things that give me an inner peace. And I hope that other people that buy my paintings will get an inner peace. Here's an example of one of my paintings. This is Turkey Run, and if you've ever been to Turkey Run State Park in Indiana, there is a place where you can stand on a suspension bridge and look down at the creek, and there are outcroppings of rocks, so I really enjoyed that. When I do paintings, I'm really excited about the forms, but also the colors and the temperature of the painting. And what I've discovered about doing water is that it can have many, many different colors, because obviously it reflects the things around it. So I'll show you a few pictures of water that I did, and all three are totally different. As I said, this is Turkey Run. This is a painting of a gunquit in Maine. And the water tends to be a darker blue because of the types of sand and the environment around it. And the skies are more of a darker blue. When you do the Caribbean, you get a totally different color scheme, and it's more cerulean, and it reflects the light quartz sand around it, so there are brighter colors, a lot of aqua and cerulean, and I enjoy doing that as well. Another one up that I have up here is a pond. My family has a summer place. It's called Long Pond. It's actually a small lake, and I love to go see the water lilies. So I go to the end of the lake in the canoe and take pictures, and then I go back and do pictures of Long Pond. So this is called Long Pond lilies. And again, you can see that there's absolutely no blue in the water, because it's reflecting the trees above it, so the water is green. And of course, I love a splash of mauve or pink, bright pink, somewhere in the painting, because it always attracts the eyes. These three are oil paintings. I also do watercolor. Watercolor is really tricky. I think it's the most difficult medium. I've taken many lessons in watercolor, but I'm always learning new things about watercolor. The first teacher I had, everything had to be very, very photorealistic. And so I would do paintings of fruits and vegetables and things that it looked like it was a photograph. And then I had a watercolor painter who's renowned around the state, who did very loose and ethereal type paintings. And so I tried to emulate her style, and I think I came out somewhere in between. Both watercolor and oil, and I'm going to show you a few of my watercolor pieces and different techniques that I use. Sometimes I do architectural pieces, buildings, windows, doorways, and I had a whole show called Portals that was all windows and doorways. When I do that type of piece, I probably spent as much time drawing and getting all the details as I do actually painting. It's very time consuming, but worth it in the end. So here's a piece that I did on Shelburne Country Store, and obviously it has a lot of details in it. One of the things about watercolor is that there are so many different techniques that you can use. You can explore every day and find something new that you can do. For example, finding texture in watercolor. Sometimes you pour salt on wet paint and it will give it a certain kind of texture, or alcohol, or you might lift some of the watercolor with a tissue or a cotton ball or a brush and get different techniques, or use masking as I did here on the shades to keep the whites in the painting. So this is just an example of a painting that I did that took a lot of work in drawing before I actually did the painting, but used many different techniques. Here's an example of a looser painting that was wet on wet. That means you start with the wet paper. You start with the wet paper and then you pour your color into the wet surface, and it gives soft edges. And I love using different colors. So you can see in the sky that I've got some yellows and oranges and reds and blues and purples, and that reflects onto the water. And again, you have to leave your whites so that you have some shimmering glow there to the water. But this is a lot of fun. Here's another painting that I did that's a watercolor of lily pads. And again, it's fun to just kind of drop the painting into the wet surface. And I always like to have a little dash of pink or mauve or red right at the focal point because it really attracts the eye. I love doing water. I do a lot of paintings that have water in them. And so this painting is from some houses in Nova Scotia, and it had the most beautiful green boat in it. So I had to get that boat. It was more interesting to me than anything around it. And I love the reflection of the boat into the water. So a lot of my paintings have objects, but they also have reflections in the water. So again, you can see that a little bit of the water is blue, but a lot of it's green and red and gray and whatever's reflected onto the surface. Again, the background is wet on wet, where different colors are dropped onto the surface and it gives a nice soft glow to it. Here's an example of our courthouse right across from the gallery. Again, this takes a lot of preparation, so the drawing probably took more time than the actual painting. But again, I love doing architectural details. I think that's a lot of fun. This is a painting of my barn. So when I look out my window of my house, I see this barn. And I didn't want to do blue sky. I wanted to do it at sunrise or sunset. So again, skies, snow, water are fun for me to paint because they reflect the colors around them. And so I've got a pink and yellow and orange and mauve sky. The barn, which is actually white, is reflecting the sky, and it has pinks and yellows in it. And of course the snow is reflecting everything around it, so it's got pink and blue and mauve. I'll show you some of my oil paintings that show 3 different types of painting that I do. One is still lifes, and I enjoy doing still lifes because the model doesn't move and the colors are usually good if the light source is good. So one of the still lifes that I did was a blue bottle that I had, and got some flowers from my garden. And I like the blue against the orange because they're complementary colors. And it was a fall scene, so I had a few little gourds out in my garden. I brought those in and set them on the table, and then just started painting. So I like the colors. I think they go great with fall. I also enjoy doing landscapes, and I like to go hiking and take photographs when I go hiking. And I've done many paintings from photographs that I've taken while hiking. So this is an example of one of them. It's kind of hard working from photographs though, because the colors aren't exactly the same as they are in nature. It's better to work plein air, which means out in the outdoors. But this one was taken from a photograph. I actually did one of this scene before, and someone purchased it, and it's now in Fairbanks, Alaska. So that kind of made me feel really good that I know that my paintings are in different places. I also have a painting I did of flowers, of sunflowers, which is in Paris, France. Because someone here bought it, and they had a relative who lived in Paris, so it's in Paris. So that kind of makes me feel good as an artist. Last week, actually this is my newest painting. Last week, I got worried about the immigration issues in the United States and had heard a speaker who was a student at Wabash College who came on a visa, and he told us about all of the issues with undocumented immigrants, and it made me very upset to think about things that are going on right now in our country and ways in which some people are being treated. So I decided to do another painting of the Statue of Liberty. I had done one last year and had the Emerald Lazarus poem in the painting. And it was purchased. So this time I decided to do an oil. This is an oil. The photograph was from a photograph I took of the Statue of Liberty when I was in New York a couple of years ago. And then I thought I wanted to put what American values should be. The name of the piece is "An America Is." And so I put into the painting all of the values that I have as an American, and I think most other Americans have. And that's respect, freedom, ethics, beauty, civility, valor, honor, rights, education, opportunity, service, progress, generosity, opportunity, enterprise, equality. The most important words, kindness and equality. And then I thought, okay, over that I want to superimpose what we need to do to get those values and to preserve those values. And so the most important thing is for us to listen to each other, to listen. We are so tribalistic right now, it's very terrible that we don't listen to one another. And when we're listening, we need to actually hear what the other person is saying. Absorb it. Try to see why they feel that way. We need to learn about other people, other cultures. And when something is wrong, we need to speak up. But the most important thing is we need to love. So this is a very special piece to me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you. I was a school teacher, and I retired about 12 years ago. And I really didn't have a lot of time for hobbies while I was teaching, because it seemed to be morning to night. And art was probably one of my hobbies. Not into sports, love theater, love musicals, support the arts, book clubs. I grew up in many different places. My father worked for the government. We moved every 2 or 3 years. So I mainly lived in the city, just outside of Boston, then Chicago, then Detroit, then Washington, D.C. So when I came here to Indiana, when I was going to college at IU, it was a real culture shock because I had never seen a combine before in my life. I knew what a tractor looked like, but I'd never seen a combine, knew nothing about agriculture in Indiana, and ended up marrying a farmer, so that's kind of unique. My father worked for the government, but he was also a veterinarian. He worked in meat inspection. But all the neighbors knew that he was a veterinarian, so if a neighborhood pet got hurt, they'd end up at our house late at night and we'd have to patch them up. So I learned a little bit about veterinary science that way. We always had animals, usually cats or dogs or hamsters or fish or turtles or whatever, but we always had animals. I think I had a rabbit for a while, but that wasn't too exciting. But I enjoyed my cats and dogs. My biggest hobby right now is playing with my grandkids. That's the most fun.
Especially the little one.
Yeah, we've been to Disney World a few times. So yeah, we have a good time. And I'm teaching my grandchildren about art. When they come to my house, they know that there's always supplies there that they can do paintings or work on craft projects. So that's my joy right now. That's what I do. I do art because I feel compelled to do art. I love doing it. It gives me a sense of peace and purpose. But the most important thing is if somebody enjoys my art and they get the sense of peace that I got painting it, that's the real benefit of doing art for me.